think that's maybe a block for people. And I think it really like gets in the way of me being able to form a relationship with that person being able to form a relationship with other people. But I think like just be you, be genuine, be authentic. And I think that opens up a lot of doors.
Back to In the House podcast. I'm here with my co-host
Jenny Woon,
and I'm Toni Singh. Thank you so much for joining us wherever you are listening from. We have a very special friend as a guest today. Her name is Cynthia Lam. She's a lawyer and owner of GBC Law Firm, which is an amazing feat in itself. And we are just so excited to ask her a variety of questions that may be important to you as business owners, realtors, developers, whatever your capacity in terms of listening to the podcast today is. We're excited to get started. And to do so, Cynthia, we have an icebreaker question for you.
Oh, I'm nervous.
Are you ready?
I think I'm ready.
Okay. What is your spirit animal?
I feel like I take different forms. I think currently I would say I'm probably a wolf.
Ooh.
A wolf because I feel like it's a little bit more aggressive than it comes across. I think I like to hunt for things that I want, but I also like to do it in a team.
I love that. It's in a pack.
Actually,
a pack.
So this makes sense given your law firm's mission and values, which we'll talk about later, which is we really wanted to have you on the show today because I think there's such alignment with the envisionment that you have for your law firm. And I haven't actually seen it out there in other law firms out there in a way that the normal consumer can understand. Mm-hmm. So I guess with that being said, why don't you give us a little bit more about your background in terms of, how you became a lawyer and then how you are now the new owner of GBC Law Firm.
First, can I interrupt? How do you guys know each other?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
I think we met in 2018. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
It's around that time.
Yeah, so 2018. So back in 2018, so the current owner of our firm, Greg, so he brought on a life coach to kind of assist our team in trying to bring everybody together to work in more collaboration, which is kind of the start of where my vision for the team came from. So her name's Maria.
And
so Maria worked with us in terms of helping us try to reach our personal and professional goals, trying to help us identify what our individual core values were and trying to bring that together in terms of how that aligned with our organization's values as a whole. So through that, I think Maria was like, I know somebody called Toni. I think you guys would really get along. I see a lot of commonalities between you two, so I think I should connect you. So, I mean, I'm never one to say no. I'm always happy to meet other people, especially people who might be like-minded and kind of think similar to me. So I'm like, yeah, of course, like hook it up.
Yeah, and Maria she's actually a real estate client of mine. And I remember when you called me. I was driving to an appointment and we ended up having lunch shortly after. We spoke even more about what our visions were. We talked about work-life balance. You did mention that perhaps one day you would like the possibility of having a family. And I was currently in that, having a young family, looking to expand my business, but not just expansion, doing it in a way that was consistent with my values as a person and what I wanted to convey to the world. So it was a great first meeting. And then I don't know if you remember this, but over the years, there were a few times you had gotten in touch with me with real estate questions for your clients, just with backgrounds and things like that. And I had gotten in touch with you regarding some clauses that we needed help with.
It's always good to have a realtor friend and a lawyer friend.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, that's how we know each other.
Okay.
So I think back to answering that question. So how did I start out? I think so when I recently announced on Instagram that this transition's happening January 1st. So in that I kind of gave a little bio about myself, and in there I kind of professed that I'm a bit of a science nerd. So that's kind of where
Yeah.
things kind of started for me in terms of deciding what to do in undergrad. I just decided to pursue something that I had a lot of interest in, and that was psychology and neuroscience at the time. So, I mean, I still like it a lot, but I just couldn't kind of foresee myself going down that path in terms of what I would do. I thought maybe I would do some medical research work, but I just felt it wasn't fast paced. It wasn't a fast paced environment in terms of what I was looking for. I wanted to be able to pursue a career path where I was able to meet different people every day, be able to hear their stories, try to see if I could help them problem solve. So I think that's kind of what led me into law.
So funnily enough, because you have a neuroscience background a little bit, right? So we are also similar in the fact that I have a psychology background, and also I was more geared towards not necessarily neuroscience, but the sciences. I combined those two as well during my undergrad.
I think we actually did talk about this
I forgot
too,
about
the
this
first
though
time
until
we
you
met.
said
Yeah.
it, and it was funny because even for that, I felt it was too slow. We were doing research at the time.
Yeah.
We were doing research at the time, and it can be very time consuming. So
And it's
we
very
both like the business
technical.
stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm kind of more of a hands-on, like trial and error. I just want to get into it, just want to try, start things out. And research is very it's very methodical. Very, I mean, of
There's
course,
a
I
time
have
and
to
place for that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Okay, great. Well, Jenny, did you have any questions?
Yeah, we actually have something in common.
Okay, what is it?
We're both members of the Burnaby Board of
That's
Trades.
right. That's
I love
right.
the Burnaby
Ha!
Board of Trade.
There you go. I'm in the club.
You're in the club anyhow. We're friends.
So January's going to happen. And my understanding is you want to take this to a whole different direction. Well, not a whole different direction. I mean, law is law, right? But what does that look like to you?
I think the biggest thing is that I kind of want to dispel this notion of what lawyers are about. And when people think of a lawyer, I think a lot of times it's very intimidating for them because they think, oh, this person, I don't know if people think this, but when I was watching TV, everyone's like, oh my God, lawyers always have their stuff together. I don't want to swear here. They always have their
You can
stuff
swear
together.
on our podcast.
You can swear.
Go ahead.
No, sorry.
So lawyers always come across
Cynthia,
like
this
they
is
have
a
their shit
family
together.
show.
They have their shit together. That's not always the case. They know everything. I feel like
Yeah.
people think they're smarter. They're afraid to ask questions because I think honestly,
Do you think that?
I don't know. Do you think that? And I think a lot of times, I find clients get really nervous. They come and I feel like they don't want to admit to not knowing things.
That's the worst.
Yeah. And I think that's the worst because it's like, I don't know what they don't know, so I can't possibly help them. So I guess that's one thing. And another thing is I think law firms have a really bad rep for wanting to work. Their employees, every other lawyers are
No
under a
work-life
grind.
balance?
Yeah, no work-life balance. And I don't feel like that needs to be the case. And that's not kind of to knock some bigger law firms. I think obviously their model is working for them. It's successful in terms of turning a profit. No doubt, I'm sure they're making lots of money. But for me, in terms of wanting to run a business that I'm passionate about and to be happy and spending so much time doing this every day, I want to make sure that I'm working with people who are also happy. So I think that's kind of the biggest thing, to try to dispel people's notion of what a lawyer is like. I want us to come across as being approachable.
Right.
And I think I want to change this idea of it being kind of a toxic work environment.
This is
I've had my fair share of lawyers. So let's go down the list here. Divorce lawyer.
I'm like, just don't
Bad
name who they are.
situation.
We don't want
No. Well, I would recommend them for sure.
Okay.
ICBC lawyer, which I'm going through right now. Real estate lawyer, of course.
Yeah.
Franchising and trademarking.
Me too.
Lawyer.
Yeah.
So, what you're saying, what I feel is they're dry. I don't have much connection with them. And I'm hearing is that you want to change that personal connection.
Yes, and I actually think that helps business development. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. For me, I think it's a compliment when people say, oh, you don't actually seem like a lawyer. Like when I meet somebody, for instance, like when I get my hair cut and they're like, oh, what do you do? And they're like, oh, I'm a lawyer. And sometimes like I'm actually feel a little bit, not shame, but I don't want to bring it up because then I get this thing where, oh, you're a lawyer? Like that type
No,
of reaction.
But that's
I get that too. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm a realtor.
We all do too.
I don't want to say I'm
you're
a realtor
untrustworthy.
because then they start.
But this is the
talking
thing,
about real
and this
estate.
is why too my real estate platform for real estate with real people. It's the same values that you're talking about here. So you're trying to foster a culture of growth. You're staying true to your guys' core values, and you're trying to have full communication with people, relationships based on integrity, respect. You have here as well, collaboration, growth. I would imagine for your team and also for your clients, and accountability because we're not perfect. So we're just so happy to have you here, and we have
thank
a
you
bunch of
so
questions
much.
for you.
Yeah, why aren't, so let's talk about, I know this is kind of going off topic in the direction we want to go, but one thing is about culture. So why don't most partners or owners of law firms practice more of this? Is there no time for it, or?
I think, and I don't know the right answer to that, but I think sometimes lawyers are just so focused. They're so focused on trying to do a good job that they're not actually thinking about their team. And I think a lot of people are not mindful of the fact that like the impact is basically what that has on other people, how that kind of trickles down this hierarchy in which they work, and how that affects people who are maybe reporting to them. So I think the biggest thing that I noticed that I think is the difference of what I'm trying to do here is that I think a lot of senior lawyers, they're very, very smart. They do a really good job and they're trained to give legal advice, but they're not trained as managers. And they're not trained in terms of being able to connect with people, to try to help other people succeed in their roles. And they don't realize that by doing that, it actually helps the people working for them do a better job.
Right.
This is similar across many industries, though. It's subscribing to that old traditionalist model with those old values a little bit, right? I
Right.
mean, it's very common even in real estate and some of the doctor's offices too. So I think it's
Like
the
working
traditional
solo,
model.
the idea of the working solo.
yeah.
And I think like for me, like I also noticed in I really think it's the relationship within your team that helps drive business
100%.
success. Like I think being able to retain good talent is something so important. The disruption it actually causes when you have an unhappy member of your team, like to try to leave and stuff. Like I think that actually causes a lot of disruption in the business that people don't notice. And I think to try to encourage like people in your team to grow and to make sure that they're fulfilled in what they're doing is so important.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, Greg started off by hiring the life coach, and I think that's a great start.
Yeah, that was cool.
to
Yeah,
that.
I
of him.
actually think that was that was one of the things that I've never heard any law firm doing.
No, I haven't either. And let's be clear, there are a lot of great law firms out there.
Yes.
But we loved this element that you're bringing to your law firm, which is very much aligned with what we're creating in our businesses.
Let's do some takeaways. Some of
Yeah,
our
let's do
listeners,
the takeaways
There's a lot of questions
to stay
that
on point here.
agents deal with that are really out of our area of expertise.
Yes.
So we can start off with maybe estate planning, because obviously we're helping our clients accumulate assets and properties. And so I don't know if there's maybe a specific question that you've encountered with some of your clients that we can ask Cynthia.
What is one piece of advice that you think every family needs in terms of protection, or something that they haven't done that can be handled by a lawyer? That they should do. So more specifically, I don't know, maybe even with estate planning, or once you purchase a parcel of real estate or something, is there something that you should be doing for protection of your family?
So
I
it
mean,
stays in the family.
Yeah,
It stays in the
I'm
family.
thinking like estate planning, possibly having a separate trust or something if you have kids that are underage because of something, a will, these kinds of things. Like what would be one piece of advice that you would have for families that are, I guess, looking to secure, build their portfolio and secure their existing wealth?
Right. So I think wealth preservation, there's one piece of that. And I think part of that people can't really plan for, and they have to evaluate over time. I think like for a will in particular, we try to tell people if you have a will to try to revisit it every 5 years just to
Yeah.
see if things have changed in your life.
Okay.
If you have to,
And you hate a family member.
yeah, exactly. If you
After a
hate
couple
if you
years.
hate your executor that's in your existing will, you're no longer talking. There's a
Yeah.
fallout. You'll
Yeah.
definitely want to change that. So I think a will falls into a personal planning category in terms of planning for what you want to happen after you pass away. Having a power of attorney done is very important in terms of planning for incapacity. So power of attorney kicks in basically. I mean, it can kick in actually right away. There's different types of power of attorney, not to get into too much detail with it. But definitely, you may want to consider an enduring power of attorney, which does continue to be in effect after you become mentally incapacitated. And that could really help because without a power of attorney, your family members or people who want to kind of step in to help may have to apply for committeeship, which is something that's a lot more complicated and time consuming and costly.
Yeah. And this, some people might think, okay, well, this could relate to me individually as somebody, you know, my personal life. And have you guys had to deal a lot with enduring power of attorneys for real estate sales? We have.
I'm dealing with one right now.
Exactly. So these are all important things. This is kind of how it ties in and also why we wanted to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions.
There's a
about
lot of
that.
questions.
And in terms of power of attorneys, like some of them, if they're not drafted correctly,
Yes.
they can't be properly registered in the land titles and used without the actual person having to basically revise it. And we've run into situations of that before. Like if it's not drafted correctly, it doesn't account for the proper provisions in there. A person could be out of town. They have a real estate transaction closing. They're relying on having this power of attorney for their attorney to be able to sign in their absence. And last minute, we realize, oh, it's actually
work.
not recognized, I guess, by the land titles. And it's been a problem,
Yes,
just to
that's
say the
very
least. Yeah.
interesting. So I guess since I guess the segment that we're talking about right now is planning for life. What about in terms of planning for partnerships? So I guess prenups, divorce, and partnership agreements between people.
So that actually borders onto a little bit of family law, but I guess I can kind of touch on that. Like whenever we have a lot of clients, I think the most common thing is a couple invest money into help buy property for their children. And they're always asking, well, how do we protect this investment? Well, what if we don't like this person's future spouse and then they get separated and the spouse then claims half of, so that's
We
kind
get
of
this question all the time too, and we're not lawyers, so.
So, I mean, one thing is to kind of get away from the law in terms of how you separate and divide property on separation. We recommend people to consult a family lawyer, get a cohabitation or a separate cohabitation or not a prenup. I guess a prenup is before you get married, but a cohabitation agreement for two people living together.
Okay.
So in case they do get into a situation where they're considered common law spouses, they can pre-agree in writing in terms of how they want their assets to be divided, and it can account for property that maybe was purchased prior to these people becoming common law. Maybe their family members had made an investment in this property to buy it for them. And I guess the other situation, what we can do sometimes, the parents might want to put a private mortgage on the property. So the private mortgage essentially secures a certain amount of money. Normally it's the same amount of money that maybe they lent to their son or daughter to buy the place. So in
once
any
it
case,
sells.
they have exactly. They have
What
a
is that
claim over
called?
it.
What is that called?
Generally, we refer to it as just a private mortgage.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a question. It's okay if you can't answer it, so don't feel pressured.
Okay.
I'm curious though. So in that scenario that you just gave, because I have a friend, and she was wondering the exact same thing. Well, she just purchased a property. She's now got a boyfriend that will be moving in with her. She wants to be protected in terms of, if they consider her common law after, she wants to protect her asset. Do you know if she had the boyfriend sign a rental agreement and they were still cohabitating in this property and then were considered common law, would she have protection over the asset rather than just drafting that type of agreement for a cohabitation agreement?
I don't 100% know that, but
was just thinking.
I'm gonna guess no,
Probably no. Okay.
because I think in that situation, I'm guessing the family law provisions would trump
Yes.
this like contractual rental
So you
agreement.
still
That's
need
just
the
my
agreement.
first.
I
Yeah,
could see that. I could see that.
I think that's my kind of first guess to that.
I find I have not really inquired more about this is the probate process. And we hear it all the time, and there's long waits for it, 60, 90 days, up
It's
to
longer
120
right
days.
now. They're very backed up.
Yeah, they are
Right.
very.
Yeah.
But I want to know what's going on in that background. So so we put an offer on a property and it's subject to the seller receiving probate. What's happening? Why is it taking so long, and what keeps it going? Like, what, explain what probate is.
So probate is a court application process that an executor has to apply for after someone passes away. So the executor is a person that's named in your will. So this is a case, if you don't have a will, that person would be called an administrator. So somebody can apply to be an administrator to actually administer your estate. So this is a process where you would typically get a lawyer to help put this probate application together. Although, like, once you actually file this application, there's certain documents that go into it. You have to declare all of your assets and liabilities in this application. Once it's filed to the court, honestly, my guess is as good as yours. What takes so long? Like, I think it honestly is just based on the volume of applications that they get. Like, they do have like individuals there who kind of look over all the applications. They're very, very picky. So oftentimes, like, we do have applications that kind of come back for like very, very minor things that doesn't fit into their format. And because there could be a lot of back and forth in that process with every individual application, I think that probably adds up to the time
see.
in terms of how they process.
Isn't a requirement though as well in order to be granted letters of probate, or like I don't know what you guys call it, letters of administration? Don't they also still have to do a will search just in case, so that they make sure
Yes.
that the property transfers? So I imagine that would take quite a bit of time, and then you're relying on other third parties, so that could be a bottleneck.
Yeah, so I guess like to take a step back before we actually finalize this application and submit it, Tony's right. We have to do a will search, and that can take it could take
Like,
up to
what does that
3
entail?
weeks.
I have no
So
idea.
we do, and we can do an online search through Vital Statistics, like BC Vital Statistics. That's the organization that completes the will search, but it takes about 3 weeks for the results to come back. So that's one thing, and then another thing is we have to make inquiries with the banks. So each place, like each financial institution where the deceased has a bank account, we will send a letter, request information for them to disclose like all of the assets and liabilities the deceased had as of the date of death, the value of all of that, because we need that for this list of assets
Yep.
and liabilities that we need to include for the probate application. So the banks are also, I guess, like especially backed up right now too. So all of that,
This
I
is
think,
interesting,
combined
really
takes a lot of
interesting.
time.
Sorry, I have one more question
Yeah.
in regards to this. Again, if you don't know the answer, it's okay. But you know how for certain investments, because the next portion of this is going to relate to business investments and these kinds of things. But if you have investments, let's just call it RSPs or whatever. When you fill out the application for that at the bank, they request that you name
A designated
yes,
beneficiary.
Yes. So if I have a will, which I do, so
Yeah.
would the will trump what was on
The beneficiary?
Yeah, the beneficiary forms, or does it depend on does it depend when they were each signed? So for example, for
Yeah,
my
okay.
RSPs, I'll just give myself as an example. If I had filled out that form in 2013, 2014. I did the will afterwards. Obviously, I have kids now too, which has changed, and I'm married, so we had to redo it.
Yep.
But I would want my kids to get my estate if I pass away, and David. So what would take precedence there? I signed the beneficiary forms before. I guess I should update it. But would the will take precedence over the documents at the bank?
Yes. So
Okay.
so it can cause more complications though if they don't say the same thing.
Yeah.
So we always recommend that if you are naming different designated beneficiaries for these registered accounts like TFSA or RSP in your will, that you do go to the bank to notify them to update it, because if there's any type of discrepancy, it can
Yes.
cause some issues in
was just
terms of
curious.
how they process it. But sometimes people will choose to designate beneficiaries for their registered accounts in their will over with the bank, because depending on the bank, sometimes they don't allow you to list contingent beneficiaries. So some people, I mean, most people, I think they probably want to name their spouse. And then if their spouse, for whatever reason, is no longer alive or predeceased them, then they want it to go to their children. But a lot of banks, I think, don't allow the second level of
That's right.
contingent
They don't often ask.
beneficiaries.
Yeah.
No,
So
yeah.
I think that's why a lot of people prefer to do it in their will. But we always recommend that it be consistent, at least for the
course.
first, your primary beneficiaries, just so that they don't have to go through this extra step of being, oh, when did you sign the will? Like, when did you sign
If you guys
this
are listening
designated
and you have
beneficiary form?
investments or you don't have a will, this is relevant to you.
As you can imagine, we want to get the listing active on the market right away. But it's this process, like we're all talking about, is taking a long time. So how can we better prepare our clients? Should we just wait and not put the home on the market, but we're just, watching the market be successful and our sellers missing out on it? Or do we put the home on the market and just wait for probate to happen?
That's a good question. I mean, so a lot of the ones that I've seen, there's always a subject condition in there saying subject to getting.
If we wanted to expedite this, like what is the best way to?
To be quite honest, like we've actually tried to expedite this getting the grant process and have not been successful. So
I think it
That's a
just
hard,
depends on the
like-
motivation then of the seller.
yes, I think it depends on the motivation of the seller, and if it's a possible thing to just put it there, have a seller subject. And then, I mean, I don't know if that will really detract from the appeal of the property, of having buyers wait sometimes indefinitely for that process to kind of go through, because it's really hard, actually, even for us. Like, a client will always call, did you get it yet? Did we get the grant of probate?
So
And
to
I'm like,
help with this, I'm gonna say what you don't have to do this. I don't know if this is the best way, but given all of the bottlenecks with COVID administration and all that stuff, we've been doing the following. So to your question, if the market is hot, yeah, you don't want the sellers to miss out, right? So, and you don't know what's going to happen and how long that's going to last for. So as long as they have a proper executor or administration document with the person name, you're dealing with the right person. I'd still get the property ready for sale and put it on the market to maximize the value in a high market. And then when you get the offers, you're exactly right, Cynthia. You would include the seller subject clause, subject to probate. We have been doing two things though, leaving longer for the extension for the deadline for that, and then including a separate clause which affords the seller the ability to extend. So you have to extend four things. You have to extend their subject removal date in the event that the probate doesn't happen. And in many cases, then you have to also extend completion, possession, and adjustments, because it does everything. So we do that. We include the clause and then an option for extension for the seller's benefit.
yeah, I actually think those are all really good.
But I'm not a lawyer. I'm just like, this makes sense.
I mean, I
We should
guess
do it
a
this way.
step back, if it's possible, like, I mean, everybody, if you're going to name somebody as an executor of your will,
Yeah, that's true.
I always tell people to keep a really up-to-date, organized list of all of your assets and liabilities and all information where you have your registered accounts, your investments, your bank accounts. So at least it'll give you an executor a leg up in getting started, and they might be able to get all this information from the bank.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the executor can actually go to the bank and request information, and they might have better luck in terms of getting a quicker response than through us, because we have to submit an authorization saying, this is our client, we're representing them. They give their consent for us to obtain this information, but that person can go to the branch physically and try to get that information quicker.
Right.
That's good advice.
Half the time I don't even remember my passwords. So
Yeah, that's fair.
yeah, definitely it'll be much more difficult for them to
Well,
get
this is
access.
homework for you for later.
I
If
mean,
you
I
wanna go
have
through
my
your
will. Let's
accounts.
put it this way. I have my will. I got my POA, my power of attorney.
Me too.
So at least I got that done. But I definitely
And
don't
executor.
have everything, you know, in a nice shoebox for them to be like, this is all my accounts that
Do you want
are
to hear
open.
something funny and also morbid?
Of course.
Okay, so I do have a list of all of this, but only because back in 2016, 2017, part of 2018, when I was really sick, I thought I was going to die.
Oh.
So I went through everything because I was worried that David would be with the kids and I handled the financials.
Mm-hmm.
So it was only that caused me to do what you're suggesting. Yeah. But I think everybody should do it just because.
Good job, Tony. You get a
Yeah,
gold
but that's
star.
not good. It was out of necessity.
I have learned a lesson. You know how during a divorce you have to
Yeah.
show your bank
yeah.
accounts, like when you first started, I guess, common law, and I didn't have any of that
I didn't know this.
available. I didn't have any of it, and I had to go to the bank to get it, and they're like, well, we don't keep records that far back, and my bank was originally in Toronto, so yeah, I would screenshot it. Probably that's the best, easiest way to store
then
everything,
what
so
did
that
you
you
do,
know what
though,
your minimum amount is.
if they
We're
didn't
guessing.
keep-
I'm
oh, you're
guessing
guessing,
now.
you're guessing.
It's like approximates.
Interesting. Okay. I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
it wasn't fun. I wanted to hear. Oh, I'm sorry, Jenny. No, sorry, no. Sorry to hear that, Jenny. No.
I am sorry to hear
This
that,
is no. This is
Jenny.
about Cynthia. Okay.
What is the best way to protect your business assets, earnings, and investments within a company? I don't know if you can, I guess every company is different and it would be specific to that company, but generally.
So I think very, very high level advice. I don't know if you're familiar with the term like a holding company.
But
So-
our listeners may not.
So
you
to
may wanna
explain what it
that.
is.
So a holding company, typically, someone may choose to incorporate a shell holding company that doesn't actually actively carry on business. It's just used to hold assets, and it may hold assets that are used by the business that you're actually actively carrying on, or it may hold just personal assets. So I guess another thing is like there's many different types of business structures. So by business structure, what I mean by that, you could be a sole proprietor. So a sole proprietor, you're just carrying on business as your individual self. You're not incorporated. The next level, I guess, is incorporation, where you have formulated a company. So a company is a separate legal entity. It can stand alone. So it can be sued. It can sue other people. It can enter into contracts. So a company is a business form or structure where you may be choosing to carry on business. And then there is a partnership. And different forms of partnership. So I guess for protection of assets and protecting yourself against liability, I don't know if that kind of goes back to it. A lot of people, once they start expanding their business operations, may choose to incorporate. Because once they incorporate, in terms of just your regular liability from carrying on business, you're not going to be held personally liable in terms of what your business is actually doing. But I think the important thing there is we always try to remind people, okay, once you've done this, don't start entering into contracts in your own name, right? So I'm not going to be like, oh, me, Cynthia, I'm going to start entering into service contracts. It would be whatever my company is.
Right.
So I guess like what your personal assets, like your principal residence, like your home and stuff, all of that will be shielded from liability in terms of association with your actual business. So I'll give you an example, maybe for the listeners to be able to understand a bit more. So I've incorporated GBC Law Corporation to buy the assets of Griner Law Corporation in running this GBC Law firm. So I own, let's say, a condo, some registered accounts, some funds in there. I don't want any of that to be exposed to liability in case like I really screw up on something. I get personally sued. And for some reason I found guilty of doing whatever I'm doing. I don't want my home to be exposed to somebody who's trying to collect on some sort of judgment. I'm just trying to explain it in a very, I guess, like simple form. So by carrying on business through the company, who the person or entity that's going to be sued is GBC Law Corporation. It won't be
Right.
Cynthia Lam.
I think the biggest question that we often get is the tax savings
Yeah.
that one would have. versus if they were to hold it on a personal level. So let's just say you held an asset or a property under the holding company, you sold it. Are the taxes or capital gains the same in that sense, or is it different if you were just to hold it under a personal name?
It would be taxed. So if it's something that's held by the company, it would be taxed under the company. But I guess the tax saving portion of it, and again, I'm not an accountant, so may not be able to give as good of an answer. But if you're actively carrying on business, you might be eligible for a small business deduction in terms of being able to pay tax at a lower rate. So a law firm would fall under that. I know if you're just holding, so the difference is if you're just holding real estate and collecting income, that's not considered active business income.
Yeah.
So that, I think, like, you wouldn't be able, any profit that you're making it wouldn't be subject to that lower tax rate.
Yeah, I think in that case, it might just depend on someone's personal scenario, right? With what they
Yeah.
have. So it's a case by case. Like that would be a hard question to answer
Yeah.
unless you had specifics.
This is beyond my expertise, but it's really interesting.
It's very interesting.
I know. Well, for like the estate planning portion of it, like, we don't act like when we help a client, we normally do it in a team.
Yeah, it
So
makes sense.
it would likely involve, like, oftentimes their financial planner or financial advisor, and an accountant. So their financial planner would have the best picture in terms of all of this person's assets. So they can kind of present a portfolio, like a picture of this, and then usually together with an accountant, I can kind of make some suggestions in terms of, maybe we can incorporate this company, we can roll over assets. I know that's kind of a legal term. So basically rolling over is just transferring assets from A to B. So we can transfer assets from here to there, or maybe change the title to some properties, do an alter ego trust, and I can advise on, there's property transfer tax that's triggered here if you do this type of property transfer, and the tax or the accountant will be like, well, that actually doesn't make sense, because if you live until this X age, if you're 99, then at that time your capital gains is going to be this much, and you're going to have to pay this much on your final tax return. So there's a lot of kind of back and forth like that when
This
we
is
look
perfect.
at a person's like whole
Yeah.
financial portfolio.
So this was actually one of our questions, if what it looks like then when you're advising somebody that has maybe like they're even a high level CEO, right? So you've got multiple assets. You are going to have a bunch probably in your personal and also in your company. How you guys, in terms of your process, work with other professionals, because there are going to be certain things that are outside of your scope, right? Like the tax accounting and everything, certainly. And that's good to know. That's good to know.
I just had an idea.
Oh, what is it?
I want to hear.
Building and protecting your wealth seminar. Realtor, lawyer, financial
Yeah.
planner.
It's a great idea.
We should put one together,
Accountant?
because this is accountant
Yeah.
and this is so complicated.
It's so complicated. And I think, like, the biggest thing is there's no one size fit all answer, because there's different priorities that we're trying to address, because there's different, like, taxes, so many different taxes, right? There's capital gains, there are property transfer tax, there's probate fees, right? And a lot of times you can't fully
It's like a whole picture, though. It's like a holistic
yes.
picture, like holistic real estate.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not joking. That's what we're doing with our clients, holistic real estate approach, because it's everything. It's not just finding
Right.
them a house or selling them a home, right? This is all encompassing. This is
Yeah,
this
you're
is a
expanding the
conversation
word-
for another
you're
day.
expanding the word holistic.
Yeah.
That's right.
In a
Outside of
big
healthcare.
spectrum. Yes, absolutely.
And then you also have to take into account the client's values, right? Like, are they valuing tax mitigation or protection of family assets
Yeah.
or succession planning? Because, like, depending on that, like, they may not care if they have to pay more of a certain type of tax, as long as their ultimate, I think, priority is being achieved.
That makes sense too.
Crazy that this is great. This is a great piece of advice. What's one advice you would have for someone who is setting up like a business strategy in order for it to succeed in the long term? What's your one biggest advice?
Well, I feel like I'm not in the right, I haven't even started mine. So I feel like almost, I mean, I can kind of share what has helped me so far, I think. I mean, I don't think there is a right time and place to actually get started. Like for me, it was, to be honest, like I started having this conversation with owner Greg, like in prime COVID time last year. And I was kind of just thinking about like my future. What am I going to do? I had to try to think of like, what I wanted to do in the long run. Did I want to stay here? So I think like for me, the one thing that has helped me kind of push forward is whenever I think of something, I try to act on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like if you have an idea of something you want to do, I think you should follow through. Like I think follow through and execution is so important to try to research the next steps to try to actually get to doing it. And I find that every time I've done that, it's just to get the momentum going, right? Like a body in motion stays in motion. And I think like
follow your
that's-
intuition and just take the opportunities.
exactly. I think like what feels right, as long as it's in line with your core values, it
answer
has,
is
it has
yes.
worked out. Yes, I think it's worked out for me. Like anytime I feel like, hey, this feels right. This is something that will make me happy. This feels right in terms of being in alignment with my core values. I just do it. And then I would just kind of figure out the pieces as I go. But I just feel like it's the starting piece, because if you don't start, you won't have the momentum to carry forward to even figure out the logistics in the middle. I kind of just start and figure out the logistics as I go.
Right. I think that will unfold as you keep working through that process. But what you really brought up, which is a really good point, are core values. Any partnership, you can partner up with anyone, but if your core values are not and principles don't align, that partnership will not sustain.
That's right.
And that's what you and Greg, and that's what I have with Toni.
This is the best. Having
So-
so much fun.
You guys have the
there's-
best chemistry. Like there's
Aw,
something
thank
great
you.
happening.
You're the nice one.
You're the mean one. No, it's no.
It's fine.
So do you have time for 5 rapid fire questions? There's so much more to cover. So after this episode, we're going to tell our listeners how to reach you. But I definitely want to go offline to talk about this Build and Protect Wealth seminar that
Yeah.
I
Oh, I'm
just
excited.
all of a sudden came out of the blue.
Yeah.
But do you have time for 5 rapid fire
Yes, I
questions?
do.
Okay.
You go first.
Okay. So I read in your bio, there's a fun fact here. You were part of a Backstreet Boy a cappella group during your undergrad. So
Kind of okay. After I wrote that, a little bit, I regretted.
you may,
Okay,
we're going to have you sing one verse. Take your time.
this is no longer rapid. I'm
Snap.
trying to think like what song I want to do.
Okay.
Show me the meaning.
Sure. I know that one.
Show me the meaning of being lonely. Is this the feeling I need to walk with? Tell me why I can't be there where you are.
Woo!
Whoa!
Listen in my heart.
Wow. Okay, that was talent. Impressive. We put
Very
you on the
impressive.
spot. You did so good.
I know.
You're the
I
best.
know. You're like, should we just skip
What
this
the
question?
hell?
No, man. We're not skipping this question.
Easier one. What's your favorite movie?
Love Actually.
Aww.
I think I've watched that movie probably like 21 times.
Okay, based on this question, obviously I creeped on your post here.
love it.
You are a big foodie. So what's your favorite go-to restaurant here in Vancouver?
So many. Savio Volpe, definitely my
yum.
favorite. Italian food is just.
We went
I can't
to
get
lunch
enough.
at an Italian
yeah,
restaurant
I can't
the
get. We
first
went to Pasta Amore. I like can't get enough of that. Ask for Luigi.
Yeah.
Nice.
I recently went to this place called Tuto.
Oh,
by,
nice.
Yaletown.
Describe yourself in 3 words.
Personable. Complicated.
Oh,
Underestimated.
yeah.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
And final question. What's one piece of advice you would give someone who's working their way up to becoming a partner in a law firm or who wants to open up their own law practice?
Don't give up, and just be you. I think just be authentic. I think a lot of times, like, anyway, it's rapid questions.
no,
You're
explain.
allowed.
No,
She's just being a jerk. You're allowed. Go
I'm
ahead.
just giving you a hard time.
Yeah.
No, just like I just think just be authentic. A lot of times I think that's maybe a block for people, and I think it really like gets in the way of me being able to form a relationship with that person being able to form a relationship with other people. But I think like just be you, be genuine, be authentic, and I think that opens up a lot of doors.
Very nice one. And final question, I promise. Where can our listeners find you?
So our Instagram handle is gbc.law. You can also reach us on our website. There's a contact email address. It's info@gbclaw.ca. So that just comes to our office and somebody will get back to you depending on what the inquiry is or what you need help with. And our website's at www.gbclaw.ca.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
There's no plans to change the name, right? Because obviously GBC stands for Gregory.
It
his
stands for
initials.
Griner, Bethel and Company. So,
Okay.
I mean, I like it. I'm driving with it. I'm gonna keep it. I think it's just been around for so long,
Yeah,
and I
there's
think
this-
like
Yeah.
the community around us, it's just they formed an attachment to that name and to what it means, and to Greg. I think it's really important for his clients that he's developed a long-lasting relationship with. So, it's gonna be here to stay.
All right.
Amazing. You're the right lady for the job.
Thanks,
Oh, thanks so
Cynthia.
much.
That's gbclaw.ca. We appreciate your time coming in person especially. So it's really nice to have you.
I know I feel
here.
so special being here in this beautiful studio.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.